once you're seated. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Nye.
Good afternoon.
Can you introduce yourself to the court?
Yes, I am Valentina Nygi, VALENTINA NGAI.
Dr. Nye, were you retained by Mr. Mullis's counsel to provide opinions in this case?
No, the firm I work for was retained and I was assigned to the case.
Thank you, and we'll get into that in a minute. Can you tell the court what your profession is?
Yes, I am a biomedical, biomechanical engineer.
In brief terms, what is a biomedical and biomechanical engineer?
So biomedical is the overarching heading that it's called, and essentially it is the application of scientific and engineering principles to biological systems to solve problems. And biomechanical engineering is a subset under biomedical engineering that specifically studies the response of biological tissues to applied forces and motions.
Do you hold any degrees in the field of biomedical or biomechanical engineering?
Yes, well, I have 3 engineering degrees.
What are those degrees?
I have an undergraduate in civil engineering. I have a master's in mechanical engineering, specializing in biomechanics, one of my specialties. And I have a PhD in biomedical engineering. Again, one of my specialties is biomechanical.
You're not a medical doctor, Dr. Nye.
That is correct. I am not a medical doctor.
How is biomedical engineering different from being a medical doctor?
Medical doctors are trained to diagnose and treat injuries. That is not what I do. I do not diagnose and treat. My job as an engineer is to consider the forces and motions and how the body responds to those forces and motions.
You mentioned it was your company that was retained by Mr. Mullis's counsel. Where is it that you currently work?
I work for Robson Forensics.
And what kind of company is that?
It's a consulting firm that employs multidisciplinary expertise, and we basically run investigations.
How is biomedical or biomechanical engineering used in the field of forensics?
Well, oftentimes I've been a forensic biomechanical engineer for almost 15 years, and my role is essentially if there is a person that has some sort of diagnosed injuries due to mechanical forces. It's my role oftentimes is to determine the mechanical cause of that injury, and how and if it relates to the subject event.
What does your work with Robson Forensics entail?
I run scientific investigations. So again, I'm one of the biomechanical engineers on staff. I'm a full-timer. I'm the head of the biomechanical engineering group. I'm the head of the medical device group, and I'm also the director of engineering there.
You said that your company conducts investigations. Who do you conduct those investigations for?
It depends.
What kinds of clients does your company have?
Oftentimes our clients are for litigation, but we are a neutral third-party firm, so we conduct investigations for both. If you're talking about civil, it's going to be plaintiff or defense, and for criminal, prosecution and defense. And we also do, non-litigation type investigations as well.
Is there a type of client that is, for the cases that you work on, is there one side or the other that your firm predominantly works for?
No, we're probably pretty even. I know for myself, I'm probably in civil cases 60%, 40% plaintiff defense, but my testimony is probably about equal, 50-50.
You've explained to us what biomedical engineering is. Is that a subspecialty within the more general field of engineering?
Yes, if you think about the classical disciplines, you have civil, mechanical, electrical. Biomedical is, again, one of those classifications under the overarching heading of engineering.
And is this a field that graduate students study specifically in school?
Oh, yes. Undergraduate, graduate, professors, industry, biomedical, biomechanical engineers are everywhere.
Are there biomechanical engineering university programs here in Iowa?
Yes, University of Iowa has a very renowned biomedical engineering program. Actually, the president of our firm is a graduate of that program.
Now, you talked about your degrees. What kinds of courses have you taken in the context of your study that has related specifically to the medical aspects of biomechanical engineering?
So I am the interface between engineering and the human body. Therefore, I have to understand not only engineering and physics concepts, I need to understand the anatomy of the human body. So I take the same anatomy courses as medical doctors do. Cadaver labs. I've held human body parts in my hands, not only for schooling, but for my actual work in my studies, you know, part of my theses and contract work as a research scientist.
Are you familiar with the field of injury biomechanics?
Yes.
What is that?
So injuries are specifically defined in biomedical engineering as a failure of biological tissue. As an engineer, it's also my job to understand how tissues fail, so material science aspects. Because part of engineering is understanding and developing and designing using materials. Therefore, we have to understand how they fail.
Have you worked in your career on issues that involve injury biomechanics?
Absolutely, yes.
And can you give us some examples of situations that involve an investigation into injury biomechanics?
Well, just in my forensic career alone, aside from my research scientist years as in my graduate program and as well as consulting projects, in my career at Robson as a forensic engineer, as I said, oftentimes somebody's got some sort of, you know, claimed or diagnosed injury, and there's either competing scenarios of how it happened, or you find a body and there's injuries to it and somebody needs to know what happened to it. What kind of forces and motions did that body sustain, experience to get those injuries? That's where I come in.
Do you have research experience in the field of injury biomechanics also?
Yes.
And briefly, what has your research into that field entailed?
Well, a lot of my research had to do with, well, again, it's about the human body and how it functions, but also how to make it better, right? So when you're learning and part of the evaluation process for, say, joint prostheses, you have to understand how the tissues respond and how they failed in the first place, and how they will respond with the devices that we are developing.
Have you done research specifically on issues that have involved lower extremity biomechanics?
Yes.
Are there any differences in lower extremity biomechanics as opposed to other types of injury biomechanics?
So if you look at my CV, predominantly my publications are in, they're all engineering related. I have eyes, I have lower extremities, I have, you know, hips, knees, but the fact is a human tissue, right? So human tissues, being materials failure, have a specific type of failure generation when it's applied to particular sets of loading. And even though you publish in one area, doesn't mean that that's the only area you work on. I've written a grant for spine research. I'm part of the Orthopedic Research Society, you know, a member of the spine section, a member of the orthopedic implant group, as well as other memberships in other societies. And this is all in addition to my work as a forensic engineer for almost 15 years.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 285. And let me know when that's in front of you, Doctor.
Yes.
If you need us to scroll through this, let us know. But is Exhibit 285 a true and accurate copy of your CV and your reports in this case?
Well, I only see the first page.
Let me show you just a paper copy of that, if I could. Do you need this?
I may.
Thank you.
The top document in what's been handed to you should be a copy of Exhibit 285. And if you could just look at that and let me know if that's a true and accurate copy of your CV and your reports from this case. Have you finished looking at Exhibit 285?
Yes, just briefing over it. It appears to be, that is my current CV. It needs to be updated, but that's what I have right now.
What is not contained in the copy in your CV? What is not updated about your CV that's reflected in Exhibit 285?
I've been meaning to do it. I just haven't had time. I've had numerous guest lectures since then. I've had presentations to medical facilities. I present to medical facilities, to fellows, to surgeons, to medical staff. So I definitely know that I did a presentation for Grand Rounds and Didactics for the Scripps La Jolla in San Diego. I've had multiple guest lectures, and I've also recently just ran a one-day workshop for a large sports manufacturing company talking about injury biomechanics.
Now, you mentioned that you work for this company, Robson Forensics. Is that your only current employment?
That's my full-time employment. I work at a gym for fun one day a week.
That sounds like a passion project, not something you do for money.
I mean, not for money, but I do get paid.
Is there anything else you're doing for employment currently?
No. That is, I mean, so it depends. Depends on guest lectures. Some facilities will pay me to do guest lectures. That sports manufacturing company paid me to conduct a one-day workshop. So do I have constant, but I have these employment opportunities.
Does your salary with Robson Forensics depend on the outcome of any of the cases that your company consults on?
No, regardless of the cases I have, the number of cases or the outcome, my salary stays the same.
All right. Do you work on any, or have you worked on any cases where ultimately after the work that you've performed, the client elects not to use your opinions? Yes,
that is not unusual.
Is that a concern for you or your company when that happens?
No, not at all, because we are third-party investigators. So whatever the science and the investigation yields, that's the findings. Whether it's, say, good or not favorable for the client that retained us, that is our answer.
Have you been qualified by courts in the field of biomechanical and biomedical engineering?
Yes, by federal as well as numerous state courts, yes.
Have you ever had a court determine you were not qualified as an expert?
Not that I know of, and that recently came up at a trial I was at, and they actually ran my name through all the databases that attorneys have access to, and in almost 15 years they did not find one motion that was ever successful in disqualifying my qualifications or my opinions.
Your Honor, obviously I'm a pro hoc attorney here, so I'm less familiar with the Iowa procedures. This is the point where I would tender the witness as an expert, but I understand that's not the court's practice here. But I don't know if this is the point at which the court would offer a voir dire.
Any additional record that the state wishes to make at this point?
Your Honor, the state stands by its prior objections as it related to the use of a specifically Dr. Nye's first report as it would qualify as vouching. I believe that shouldn't be considered here. We do have a question as to what would be included in that binder. There's portions of it that are not appended to Exhibit 285, so I think now would be potentially an opportune time to take our afternoon break.
Okay, and I think at this point we were just taking up the expert witness issue, and I was just asking if there was any additional record you wanted to make.
No additional record other than our prior rules. Obviously, as Mr. Brown noted earlier, we're not a Daubert state, so.
Yep, okay. And again, certainly, the court believes that the witness is qualified, so I don't think we have any problems there. I understand we might have some issues with regard to Exhibit 285, and it sounds like the state wants to clarify that. Why don't we go ahead and take about 15 minutes for our afternoon break at this point. Doctor, you may step down. We'll plan on picking back up hopefully about 2:45. Court is in recess until then.